Yes, we are.
Everybody good? All set?
Sure. I apologize. They were plugged in, so I assumed they were charged.
Oh, I couldn't turn on.
Do you want the cord or do you want to, I think
I
this
can-
one, we don't have it
Jackie
on.
needs one.
I can just take it.
Try this one, or either way, but I'm not sure. Since it's not on, it probably took the same amount of time. Okay, that's charged.
It's going to fire up.
It's turning on, so that's good. There you go. That's a
Great,
full
thank
charge.
you.
Yes, I apologize.
No, great.
That looked like it's charged. Yours came up different. Yeah, I'll leave these here, just in case. So what thank you? You have everybody's got these, I'm sure. Okay, good. Yeah, you're full. Okay. All right,
Awesome. Thank you.
just give me a
Thank
shout.
All set? I would like to call tonight's regular meeting to order at 6:05. If you please stand to pledge the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Does anybody wish to remove anything from the consent agenda? I would like to remove the Commission of Accounts. I have a few questions on that. So entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda minus the Commission of Accounts. So that would be the minutes for January 20th, February 24th, March 17th, and April 14th, the Treasurer's Report, and the Internal Claims Audit Report, and the CSC Report.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of accepting the consent agenda, those 4 items, please signify by raising your hand. And I did, Rich, have some questions about the condition of accounts.
Sure.
Just out of curiosity, when I was looking at it, what I need is a little competition, for people to hear me. The internal claims auditor, that is not encumbered, you just leave that until we spend it, you don't have to encumber?
I am not sure, but I can find out for you.
Okay. And you did make some changes as far as the numbers are concerned. On page 3, there were 2 lines, the special education instructional salary and the non-instructional. Did you move things around in that area before transfers?
I don't know if I moved it around in the budget. Specifically,
Well, first of all, you have a minus a year-to-date expenditure, so you showed that somebody added $14,850 into that line.
yes.
So we have an unencumbered balance there.
Yeah, Tina and I are working on that particular line. There's, I believe that's a federally funded position. So we're working on identifying where that particular number belongs. I don't know if it belongs in the general budget or in the F budget, so we're trying to get some clarity on that, and hopefully that will be fixed within the next few days, but we are aware of that, yeah.
So did you move some of that money that had been originally put for non-instructional salaries?
Yes, that is a, I believe an admin position that was federally funded, so we took it off because there was enough, because that position is completely federally funded. We took it off the general budget and put it into the federal budget, where the monies are there to account for it.
Okay, but originally you had 25,500 in that line?
Yeah.
Okay, so and then
Yep.
you showed a minus one there. So I was wondering if you had allocated the monies from one line into the other? I know that the superintendent has the authority to authorize transfers, I think it's under $5,000. Do you include those transfers in a report anywhere?
I believe, I thought I had sent them,
We have the ones that we have to act on.
oh, I have those that I thought I had set to be posted, but if they weren't posted, I can provide them pretty quickly, so.
Right, just so that.
In the future, I'll make sure they're definitely there.
So, what are people's thoughts on accepting the condition of accounts? Do we want to clarify those numbers first before we accept them? Yeah, so we'll do that? Yep. We'll do that. There is no presentation this evening, so at this point, I'd like to open up for public comment. If there's anybody here who would like to address the board. Okay, anybody, no? Nobody raising their hand?
Not seeing
Got it.
anybody.
There will be another opportunity at the end of our meeting for public comment. Dr. Glover, the capital project update?
For a capital project update, living proof that is going on, the beeping behind you. That is happening. We are in full swing. We're actually in kind of the beginning throes of summer and getting ready and prepared for there, as well as getting the primary building ready for students coming up on Monday. That's there for the for the building on the Monday side. We just went through and had the fire inspector come in and recheck our fire alarms and got kind of the okay for that. So that piece is done. And any little punch list things will be continue to work on as we get closer to Monday. The building itself, remember, will not be completely completed. There is still a bathroom we're still working on. There is still the PA system that'll have to go in, but that's planned for the summer. For the main PA, the phones all work in the area. And then we'll be working bit by bit on a couple of the classrooms that we aren't using for cleaning up the rooms and cleaning up the stuff on the shelves and cleaning the shelves and going through and doing all of that work. Custodial staff has done a wonderful job in getting things up and ready for the portions that we are using, and they'll continue to move forward as we get ready for Monday there. The gymnasium in the primary building, it's going to be off limits there. That is still going to be storage, and that area still be used by the construction folks. But most of the work there is really about door framing, and so most of the saw work and all that's going to be outside on the driveway side of the building. That's there. So that's it for the primary building. For the summer work in planning, a lot of the focus right now is on the heating system. Actually, we just got an email tonight that we got a boiler that's going to be here tomorrow. So we're going to put it hopefully into a bus bay and have it sit and wait till it's time. Once we get through here in a couple of weeks, we're going to be starting the removal of the univent process to get those out of the way in preparation for work over the summer where we can abate where we need to abate. A lot of the places, like the current part of the high school we're in now, we don't have to worry about any abatement because all this was built after asbestos was an issue. But the rest of the high school pieces, we are going to be taking out, going to put a couple crews on nights, and we anticipate a couple weeks over the evenings that all the units will be taken out, all the classrooms, and then they'll continue the work really right after the school year is over and in the beginning of the summer about the boiler switch over and finishing those changeovers from there.
Don't mean to interrupt, just as you're talking about removing the univents, do they have to cover that up? I mean, once you touch that, you have moved into any asbestos placement. How do they handle that?
Any of the pieces that are asbestos concerns, as I understand them, are in the adhesive in the tile. So in all of our univents sit on top of the floor, so there isn't any concern about interfering and running into the asbestos piece, which is how we're able to go in and pull those out. Unlike in the primary, some of the asbestos was actually part of the unibed itself. It was a heat shield, basically, against the wall. So there, when we did that, we had to take all of that out, and there wasn't any way to demolition that without going in and doing the covering in and getting the positive air pressure and all those things you do for abatement. So we're able to go in and get the unibeds out first, and then do the abatement over the summer when no one's here.
Oh, thank you.
That's the big piece for summer. We'll continue over the summer with working on the bathrooms here. There was a little bit of delay where some of the crew, because of COVID, had to be pulled off the job for a little bit. So we'll continue to work on the circle bathrooms there for the individual toilet rooms that will be there. Work continues on the fire alarms in the main building to get those up into place. That work will continue. The speakers in the classrooms and the PA system for the main building will continue. Work will continue there. We'll continue to work for the bathroom upstairs. There's a lot of little things we're headed towards, and a couple really big things we're headed toward. And really mid-May is where we're going to get started as we go through the 60 days to get us to the end of the summer, including work in the gymnasium. It's where we are. It's a Vero herring and a very exciting time because it's a lot, but it's also really the beginning of the end of the project to wrap everything up.
And speaking of the beginning of the end of the project, we had spoken about it earlier on, the area behind the bus garage, and we had talked about some different options for that.
Mhm.
Is that included in these plans? And if so, if we're winding down the project, we do need to determine how that's going to be addressed?
Yep. The original plan for behind was to leave everything alone, clean up the areas for the entry area, but was to leave the stone driveway. If there's anything different, we'll need to give them some direction on what we need to do differently to wrap up behind there. If it was to remove all the stone out and turn it back into the trees, if it was to pave it, if it was to, anything there, we'll have to give them direction there. Right now, the plan is to leave that with some cleanup along, property lines.
So what would be the purpose of leaving it? We don't seem to need it as additional parking.
There are some nights where we could use some additional parking. We have some Codex storage units, the big tractor trailer pieces that we could have. That would be a good space for them to have and put there to get in and out of some storage. Extra parking for buses for bus storage. So there is, would be use for that space, behind the garage.
Because there's that area that is adjacent to the paved parking lot.
Yep.
That seems sometimes to have buses or different things parked on it. And I don't see people using that as parking, but I do see it used for those types of things. So is that an adequate amount of space for that need? If we could return that space?
We could recheck to see what, Joe felt in there and what Paul felt for space out there. If I had to guess, I would guess that the more space they had, the merrier, especially in the winter when we have all that kind of where the dumpsters and the recycling and all that is, and the more of the dirt area there, it gets all pretty much taken up by all the snow when we do the snow removal. But we can see how much more space that they think that they need.
Because it would be nice to return some of that back to green space, especially since it was used for projects for some of the school programs here. So you will get that information for us because we have to have those plans finalized, right? To know what goes into the project.
Mm-hmm. Luckily, most of that will be site work.
But
So
we still have to make sure. We
yeah,
have the money
there's
to
still
cover.
parts in the plannings and monies in there, but
Right.
it's not like it's, we're not building a building or we're not having additional mechanical, so that
But we want to make sure that we appropriate the money or identify how much money. And if it's going to be just left alone and just cleared, that's a lot less than if we're returning it back to some of its green space, so.
And did we ever finish up on the fence between
No, Dan, to that point, and a little bit to Ann's, and the last conversation when we talked about the list of things of, is there anything else we want to do with the project? It was stated that we were done, that what we had planned into the project is what we had planned in the project, and everything else would have to go back to
I
a
thought that fence was supposed to be
Yeah,
part
that
of
was
that.
unclear.
The fence was an add-on to the project.
Right, well,
So I
then-
think that was Dan's clarification.
Yeah,
Question.
it was an add-on to the project, so that's why we have the temporary fence up there until, whenever the board wants to reconvene and have a conversation about what's gonna be the next part, or next projects, or do we wanna pick that up in a $100,000 project in a future year, so you don't need a full project to do it, but you can do it through a different funding mechanism, which could be a possibility for that fenced area, because that's not that large of a space. So it's just a,
that was something that we had talked about way early on as completed in the project. So it was out there that this was part of what we were going to do to wind down the project. Just like this space behind the bus, we've already talked about it. This is not, we were talking about new projects, something that we hadn't discussed. We told people that we were going to do that fence. We said it was going to be part of this project. So it is part of the project. If you want us to vote on it, I think that's what we can do, if that's what you need us to do. But we talked about that way early on. So it's not new.
no, the conversation isn't new, Ann, but what is we talked about it back, well, I think when it was first brought to the board, when I brought it to the board in January, and there
It
was.
was even earlier
I was
than
gonna
that.
say, I think
Or the year
Mr.
prior.
Garrity, right?
Yeah,
Brought
we
it
brought
to
it
our
earlier.
attention
Yes.
back in the fall.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we had that conversation.
So if it's not the project, then we have to find another way to put the fence here. Is that what you're telling us? Because
No.
you said we were
and-
going to do
And
that.
what I previously relayed was it could fit into the project. And more recently, I brought to, here's what we think the costs were going to be,
Mhm.
and we believe this will fit into the project.
And
Since-
we didn't say no. And
Next-
now you're telling us
okay.
it's not part of the project.
It was never part of the previously planned project. It was an additional brought in
Okay.
back as part of the conversation. And then the board said, and then when we were talking about that list, that came up a part of the list of what's the additional pieces going to be. And it was stated that we aren't going to do anything that wasn't part of the original project. But the fence wasn't part of the original project. It was an add-on in that I brought to the board based on a neighbor piece. As far as I'm concerned, it should go in there, we should put it in there and be set. So if we want it there, no problem from my seat. It's just,
I think there's consensus that
Yes.
the fence should be put up.
Yes.
The fence should be,
I mean, exactly where it ends up, I mean, project,
so we want to do behind the bus garage. Because that also, what I just described to you was what is in the project, is that space would be there, what the original plan was. And then the new ideas of green space and bring some of the trees back up to there to basically re-landscape the area.
you were the one that told us that that was possibility. So
It is a possibility with the funds that we had set and left over that Rich, was what a part of Richard brought up and said, we want to try to get anything else we went into the project because we need to be able to have it in the funding side. And then,
And that's why we're asking about that.
yeah, and that's at the last meeting or the meeting before we said, anything else to do with the project, we'll wait.
I think we're talking about big scale stuff. I mean, honestly, that's, I wouldn't really say that's, that pretty squarely fits in the project if we disturbed an area. What do we want to do with it, right? I mean, I think that, independent of the timing of maybe this should have come to us months ago, but the fact that, I mean, I think this isn't like doing something completely new, right? I
Putting
mean,
a ramp in the building, or
Exactly.
adding,
doing something in an archway,
Right.
right? I mean, something that's completely new. I mean, it's an area that we disturbed. What do we do with that? I mean, I don't know what the consensus is. I'm not sure we'll come to the consensus in the amount of time we want to allot to that tonight. But,
so that will go on a list of future projects. A discussion of topics. To me, it was not an add-on because it was space that was already included. We touched it, we took it apart, and what I take apart, I put back together. So for me, it's not a new thing. Okay, moving on. I'm not even sure how to pronounce that.
Campo.
Campo. Okay, thank you very much. We have received communication from Mrs. Maxwell for the FFA to do a summer visit at the camp. Is this?
Aswagachi, that's how you pronounce that.
Okay.
How is it?
Aswagachi.
Aswagachi, okay.
I'll have to stop and think about that next time I go to say it. Is this something that requires action on our part, or is this just a notification that?
It's a request, I believe it's an overnight,
Mhm.
and as I recall, the policy requires overnights to be approved by the board.
Okay.
Yes, 3 nights.
3 nights. So this is actually under communication, so it's not, there's no action attached to it. So is that something that she needs from us tonight?
Ms. Maxwell, do you need action tonight?
Yes, that would make registering for camp a lot easier if I knew I had approval. So yes, that is needed tonight, if it can be done.
Yes, it can. We'll move it into instructional affairs. Is that where it should go or not?
Sure. That a new business, either or.
See. Campo. I will try to. All right, good. Sounds like a great,
Sounds fun.
sounds fun. Okay, old business, moving on to old business. Entertain a motion to approve the appointment of Abby Ferrara to the position of district clerk effective December 16th, 2020 and ending in June 30th, 2021 at the stipend of $2,400.
Second.
This actually corrects a mistake that was made when we first hired Abby. We added the word annually, and so that reduced, we had picked $2,400 as a stipend, already prorating the money that Karen had been paid, but by adding the word annually, we had contracted it more. So this is actually just a correction of that action. All those in favor, please signify by saying, or raising your hand. Thank you. Okay, moving on to business affairs. We had 2 transfers that we were asked to look at. A motion to approve the attached budget transfers as presented.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor of approving the transfers, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. And we have 2 BOCES votes to take care of tonight. We do have the first one, entertain a motion to approve the 2021-2022 BOCES administrative budget.
So moved.
Any discussion about the budget? All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. And the second BOCES one is, there are 8 open seats on the BOCES Board of Education. Of those 8 seats, 5 are full 3-year terms ending in June 30th, 2024. The 3 additional seats are partial 2-year terms with an end date of June 30th, 2023. We have 6 candidates that have been nominated. Entertain a motion to approve the 6 nominated candidates for those seats.
So moved.
Second.
If you raise your hand, you're going to be added into the next 2.
All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand.
Does that get us on the
Yeah.
ballot?
Careful, right? Be careful what you, yeah. Okay, so, Actually, I told Dr. Glover I did take copies of these because they're supposed to be signed by the district clerk, and so they need a board signature. I'll sign them and make sure he has those. All right? And the last, under business affairs, the preliminary plan for fund balance. We have received a packet of information.
So I know last week, Thursday, we had talked about what we were gonna do with our fund balance. So I'm starting the process of taking a look at what we currently have, understanding, where we're maybe a little bit overfunded, where we're potentially underfunded. I have a meeting with the State Controller's Office and some auditors out of there on Thursday to get some clarification. So what I wanted to do is I didn't want to post it because this is kind of preliminary and I still have some questions on some of the assumptions that I made here, but I wanted to get to the board some information and some thoughts about what we're currently doing. So I put together a brief fund balance analysis. I took a snapshot of the fund balance, and basically what I did is I took a look at, from what I understand, and the rule of thumb has been for a lot of school districts, is that you want to have about a year's worth of expenditures in these particular funds, at least a couple of the funds that we use annually. So for instance, I looked at the workers' compensation line. General rate for this year, for the 21-22 school year, we're using about $79,000, which tells me we've got about 2.75 years of coverage, and it's a little bit overfunded. I did the same thing with insurance. Unallocated insurance was just a little under $70,000. So I went through these particular lines and tried to figure out, where we have some extra funds that we could draw down on in the future, and where we need some coverage. There was one line, employee benefit accrued liability. This particular fund is used to fund retirement. So when people retire, they have unused sick days. We can draw out of this fund to pay those particular bills. The question I have on this is that there's also some incentives to have people, especially the teachers' retirement, to retire early. And if they retire early, there's some incentives in the contract. And the way it reads, it's kind of ambiguous, so I'm not quite sure if you can use that out of this fund or not. That's one of the questions I have for the auditors, the State Controller's Office on Thursday. But if you can, that tells me we've got about 50, enough funding in there for about 15, almost 16 retirements. So this is a very restrictive fund, and you can move it in between funds, but there's some restrictions and some processes that you have to follow. So I'll get more clarification on that on Thursday. The employee retirement system, at one point in time, that was combined with the teacher's retirement system. Now they're allowing us to separate those both. And again, for the next upcoming fiscal year, I believe we have an employee retirement system, $285,000 in the budget, $530,000 for a teacher's retirement system. When you put them together, it's about, just about $800,000. So between, I know that the employee retirement system is a little bit overfunded, but if we were to transfer some out to the teacher's retirement, I think we would be just about $30,000 over and would have funding for a particular year. So that's just kind of the way I'm starting to look at it right now, trying to create a baseline so that we understand where we are. And after Thursday's meeting, in addition to this packet, I went through each of the different fund balances and broke them out individually. I talked about the repair fund. We have $340,000 in the repair fund. I don't think it's over or underfunded. You could have, if you have a significant repair to a roof or something that isn't covered by insurance, that could easily be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. This fund is to basically fix things that have been broken from a capital perspective, not necessarily equipment. So you could fix a building, a roof, a fence, those type of things out of this particular fund. So that's where it is. And this is, again, another question I'll ask the auditors and the Controller's Office for some guidance on Thursday. Went through the workers' compensation fund. We talked about this. I think this is a good fund. We can draw this down over the next couple of years so that we don't have to basically, it'll help us keep our tax cap in check. The insurance fund, the same thing. We have about 2 years of funding, so we can pull this down over the next couple of years. The employee benefit accrued liability line, again, we have $392,000, about 16 retirements. If we can use it to fund all the contractual obligations. If the Controller's Office says we can't, we can only fund certain things. That may mean that we have many more retirements, and we could probably use this and transfer some of the money to the other funds. Again, we talked about teachers' retirements, and at the end, just some takeaways. After looking at what we have, we're looking at about a little over $242,000 and potential excess funds that we can start taking a look at and maybe start using over the next couple of years. And again, because you're limited in the amount of funds that you can take out, it may take 2 years to draw this down a little bit. But we can also look at options of potentially transferring this to a fund that we can use a little bit sooner. And I have a lot of questions on this, that's why I didn't put it up, and plus the timing of when I got the work done, but I just wanted to kind of talk to the board about where we're going. Over the next couple of weeks, I hope to put together a projection of where we plan on finishing the year. So by the next board meeting, we'll have a projection of where we're gonna finish, and hopefully the June board meeting, we'll have an updated projection, so we know if we're gonna have extra money over at the end of the year. And as we get closer, we can start talking about some of the options that we're gonna have for any extra money. I've also put together some cafeteria information. Right now, the cafeteria is about $50,000 $30,000 favorable, which is pretty good. The federal lunch program has been paying us well. And again, those monies usually at the end of the year get moved to the general fund. And I've also put together the numbers for the F fund, so you can see all the federal funds that we have in the system, how they're being paid, and we can start talking about the process of how we budget for the federal funds, and where we are from a financial perspective and how we expect to finish up at the end of the year.
So this is your first,
I wanted to get, I know we had talked about it on Thursday, and I wanted to get the board at least some information and some direction so that, we started to progress on this. It's gonna be a little bit of progression, but I think by the next meeting, I can definitely have a projection about where we're gonna finish. And I'll have some solid answers on these funds, and then we can look at some options and talk about what we wanna do. But I think we'll put together, especially for the auditors, I'd like to get together a nice, a plan for our fund balances and our reserves, so that we have some type of direction with them.
and one of the things, and I think I did share this with you, and I don't know from anything other than, what's included in these note sheets, is that the teacher retirement system, what he's written here is no longer exists and should be moved to the employee
That
retirement
has changed
system.
since that.
That's changed
That has changed
since
since that.
January?
Yeah, it just changed recently, and in fact, I just read something off the state controller's office that basically now the teacher's retirement system is kind of a subset of this. So I had to fill out some information. I don't know if it was for the property tax cap or report card or one of the state filings I had to do. And I think it was the report card, because we had to put the reserves in, and on a report card it had a separate box for employees and teachers retirement. It had a little note. Starting this year, we want to separate the two, and it's had a little subset of it. So that's the direction I took.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Lasik of the plan?
No, it's good information. I do think that, even though it's draft, I think it'd be fine to put draft on it, but I think that anything we look at here's gotta be made available to everybody. Open meeting
Yeah.
law says so.
Yep. Until I got some answers.
But I think it should be on there now. I mean, I
Okay.
just, let me finish. This has happened a couple times, and it's not okay for us to be looking at stuff. Transparency, New York State Open Meetings Law says people need to be able to see it. So I don't want it to happen again, because I think that every time we do that, there has to be trust between us and the community that we're sharing everything with them. If we're looking at stuff they don't have access to, that's not okay. And we can just put draft on it. It's okay. If we're not certain, I think that's fine, but I think it's gotta go up.
Thank you for that.
It's gotta be made available to the community.
Thank you for the direction. I'll have it.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, moving on to instructional affairs. Mrs. Viera is not here with us tonight, but she did send some information. I do, however, want to share my news and notes with you, as well as the information that was asked about in the 3-foot plan when we were in the process and what it might look like. Her news and notes, grade 3 through 6 have completed the ELA portion of the state testing for this year and are preparing for the math portion next week. Things went pretty well with the technology piece, and students seemed relieved that the test was a shorter version than in past years. Our pre-K, kindergarten, and self-contained classrooms were all on campus last Friday, and it looks as though everyone had a great first day back. I was even able to go into each classroom and do the morning pledge in person with each group. This was very exciting. Today, I was able to meet with each grade level of students and discuss the return of all students on campus next week and what that will look like. I will be meeting tomorrow with the gold students. The students were able to ask questions and all seemed very excited about being back in school with all of their friends. We have also had a good response from most of our remote families, with the majority of them looking forward to sending their children back to school. Our pre-K and kindergarten classrooms are almost completely set up, as well as our self-contained classroom, and ready for their move back into the pre-K 2 building. The students are so excited about getting to move over into their new classrooms and are looking forward to a tour on Friday. Ms. Heideland took each classroom outside last week in celebration for Earth Day and discussed the importance of taking care of our planet. I think they all managed to enjoy some nice weather and helped to keep our campus looking great. Our tech guys, Dexter in particular, have done an amazing job of getting some of our new technology, Chromebooks, into the classroom and our students' hands. The students and teachers are very excited to have their own classroom computers. I also understand that there's some smart boards floating around too, they're being used. We are beginning our interview process for some of our retiring teachers, and although bittersweet, we are excited about the pool of candidates. And this is her note about the 3 feet. Although the majority of our recent BLPT meetings have been focused on our students returning under the current guidelines of 6 feet, there was some discussion on things that would need to occur, and we will continue to have those discussions. Some of these include: 1, we have at least 3 grade levels that have over 40 students. This would require for us to have a 3rd classroom at these grade levels. Even with 3 feet, we will not be able to double our desks in each classroom to accommodate all the students safely. Not all of our classrooms are the same size, so we would also be looking at options for other classrooms or larger, different spaces. We have begun looking into measurements to see the capacity for each classroom with the 3-foot distance. With the extra classrooms, there would still be a need for aid support, but possibly of a lesser number. Some of these numbers and adjustments would be dependent on our returning students. I have had several parents that have reached out and stated that they are not comfortable with the 3-foot parameters and would keep or make their child remote. I believe a survey or forum or both would best help us to determine what those numbers might look like. This information will help drive the number of classrooms and aides needed. I know this is not a lot of information on the topic, but our recent BLPT meetings have been focused on the upcoming re-entry at 6 feet of social distancing. Our next meeting will be sure to have more discussion on how to best put a plan in place for returning our students under the guidance of the 3-foot parameters. And she apologizes for not being with us tonight, and if we have any questions, please give her a call. So, thank you, Ms. Vieira. She made sure we were all updated. Ms. Adams?
Good evening, everyone. So, a few updates from the junior senior high school. Last week, we had our first Friday back in the building with students. It was a purple day, and it was very exciting for the teachers and I think for the students as well. So things ran pretty smoothly. A lot of thanks to Mr. Zarzicki, who had to build a special day rotation in there because originally we did not build the schedule to include Fridays in person. So we had a few bumps in the road, and but our teachers showed great flexibility. It was mostly on our internal end, and we've got it worked out now. So I was very excited for us to have our purple students here, as well as our 5-day-a-week students. So we look forward to another Friday this week. It will be another purple day. That'll be the second half of our schedule, periods 5 through 9, and then we'll follow with 2 gold. The schedule is up on the website for anyone who did not receive that through their email. We also mailed them home by U.S. mail. But if anybody needs a color copy, you don't have a color printer, just feel free to call the office and we'll get you one. Our Learning Center is also open for students who have not reliable remote. And on purple days, I think we're up to almost 20 students who are coming in and spending some time in the Learning Center, some time in class. if there are seats available. So we're working on fine tuning our system, but so far it's worked pretty well. Tomorrow will be our first goal day with our students, and right now we have close to 10 students. But every day we're getting additional requests for students to come in, and so far so good. And Mrs. Myler has done a great job in getting the systems set with the teachers for that. And you know, if anybody still needs to have a spot, just call the high school office and we will get you set up and we'll explain the process to you. Our next steps in terms of 3 feet are to meet with the BLPT. We have a meeting scheduled next week and the week after. It is recognizing a very busy time of the year for parents, teachers, and our students, again, with athletics, but we're going to make it work the best we can. So we probably will also seek in some non-traditional ways to get additional feedback, just in case not everyone can attend those meetings. But for us, it's really just discussing the general framework we just need to return some furniture to the classrooms. And right now our teachers are collecting information on how many additional desks or lab stools we would need in the classroom, and whether or not that would put their section, they could fit their entire full capacity section in that room. So far our data is working out nicely. We just have maybe a study hall or two that might be a little large for the room, and we have some options to relocate those to a larger area, or split up the study hall. So in that case, we're in pretty good shape. Really, our discussions will just need to be on common areas such as the library and the cafeteria. The cafeteria provides a little bit of a challenge because if we bring back all our students at 3 feet, the cafeteria, when students are eating with their masks off, still needs to be at 6 feet. So that provides a little bit of a challenge for the 6-foot capacity. We've been running about 2 grade levels in the cafeteria at the same time. If everybody was back, we would be slightly over. So we're just kind of crunching the numbers on that. And we have, I think, a few options in order to accommodate that. It might just be moving around a few lunches for some of our classes. So really, our discussions in our BLPT will really be around our options for lunch, as well as how the library might work. Again, that's going to be still somewhat restricted access and room in the library. We don't have a lot of information. I have to work with Mrs. Fraunhofer to see if any of our criteria has changed in terms of quarantining books and those types of things with some of the more recent guidance. So those are things that we still need to look at. The other piece is just, again, as Mrs. Vera had put in her notes, is the comfort level of our families. How comfortable are they with moving to 3 feet? Is that something that they're comfortable doing on a large scale? You know, again, for us, it doesn't require as much change or preparation as it does in the elementary school. You're talking about kind of changing the number of rooms that you have per grade level. And for us, you know, we could just add those desks back and that furniture back, but we just have to make sure we have a plan. You know, the students who can come back, hopefully the majority of them will, and the ones that aren't comfortable, I think the discussion will be is we would continue to support them remotely now that we have synchronous learning in the amount of time that's left. So I think we have some really good options, and I think we're pretty close to a plan. I'm sure Dr. Glover will share a little bit more about, you know, when we might have the possibility to return to 3 feet based on our zone, and I'll let him get into those discussions. And then, you know, it's just that piece of trying to pull people in terms of transportation and working that out. So I think we're pretty close at the high school here. So I think really our BLPT discussions are just fine tuning that plan. Last week, we also administered the ELA computer-based testing last week. Session 1 only. New York State has revised that requirement to session 1, and they reduced the test to 28 questions, multiple choice at our level. So that was very achievable, and about most students finish that in about an hour and a half, and we'll look forward to having math next week. Athletics, as you could see when you drove in, we are wrapping up our fall 2 season, and again, just so many thank yous to our coaches and Mr. Zarzicki, who, just lots of changes day to day, week to week, with games being canceled, changing fields, the opportunity and negotiations to add spectators to the mix, as we were able to move a lot of our games out of Golden Goal and supporting that process, and also to our athletes who followed the protocols, have done a great job with that, and our families and their understanding for the times that they could be at games and the times they could not. And we really appreciate all the flexibility that everybody has shown. And we are now starting our spring season. Most practices have begun this week, and we'll be looking forward. I believe a lot of the games will be starting up next week for most of the sports. So pretty quick transition over to spring, but it's nice to see our fields coming together and being able to have games back here. I think we will all be very happy with that. So again, thanks to the facilities crew as well. I would be remiss in thanking them if I didn't thank them, because they did a great job. That was really instrumental in getting some games where we could have spectators here. They really got the fields together. It was kind of rainy and chilly, and but they made it happen, so we appreciate that. Next week we have we're going to begin our interviewing for the guidance position. So we have a stakeholder committee. Then we will be interviewing over 2 days next week, and I think we have a nice pool of applicants, and so we're hoping that we'll find someone who's the right fit for us here at Salem. And finally, we're reviewing the end of the year guidance from the Department of Health. So they recently sent out updated guidance on academic end of the year academic celebrations. And what's interesting is that although things are lightening up, some of the guidance is a little more detailed than it was last year for graduation and those celebrations. So we're sorting through that now, and we're making our plans in terms of graduation and what that will look like. So stay tuned for that. We hope to have more information soon. And also just want to let everybody know that we really have recognized that it's not been, again, a traditional year for our seniors. And we are coordinating with the senior class and the senior class advisor. We have a teacher group that has been working to celebrate our seniors and do some fun little recognitions, as well as the after prom committee. Although the prom was canceled, the restrictions were such that the majority of the students gave feedback. They didn't think it was worthwhile, but they wanted to look at other options. So we're in the process right now of planning some celebrations, activities, events, something not 100% sure yet, but maybe like a senior week or just some end of the year celebrations that we can get the seniors together, socially distanced and within the guidelines, but so that they can be together a little bit at the end of the year and create some final memories before graduation. So we will keep you updated on that, and that's all I have.
Thank you. Dr. Weber?
I'm actually start with one of Julie's last points and work the other direction. And that's when we're looking at the end of year guidance for celebrations, particularly graduation. When we're looking at graduation, they're allowing for outdoor ceremonies to be socially distanced, but you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to worry about testing or requirements for being vaccinated for the ceremony if you're under like 200 people there, and they have different angles that it goes through. They also have the same guidelines for indoor venues. So if you have indoors is something like 50%, you can only have 50% capacity. Right now, we have more capacity in our gym than we do our front lawn. So whereas we're going to have a graduation of 200 people on the front lawn, if we're writing the regs right, we could have 300-400 inside. Because the gym's capacity is over, what was the number? I'll have to recheck the number, but it's a large number of what the capacity in the gym is, because they're taking into account the bleachers and the floor spaces, everything that's there. So the gymnasium will get us more space than out front does. The other part, and the challenge too, just the general what happens on rain dates, what happens with other pieces, so there's a lot of pieces that are going on. When they talked about lightening up and loosening up, they actually became more restrictive. Case in point, if it were just Rich and I in the room at one point, we would be fine without a mask. Now we have to have them on because we're inside the building. Outside, it's a little bit different. So there's a lot going into the graduation to look at to see how many people we can have here and try to hold it as traditional as we possibly can, which was our goal last year. That's our goal again this year, to see what we can do. But as Ms. Adams said, there's more to come. On the remainder, the 3 feet I think the biggest challenge we have to face is where we are in the zones, if you will. Today we're orange. A couple days ago we were red. Tomorrow we could be red. The day after that we could be blue. There isn't a consistent travel with it. So how are we going to manage a way to be able to keep a consistent move toward, like, if we get to 3 feet and we want to bring be able to bring everyone back into the building at 3 feet, we can do that if we're consistently blue or if we're consistently yellow. But if it continues to jump between places, that's going to be problematic. So we're looking at to see, how that's going to influence overall, and how we're able to do things in the school building. And that's really for my chair, that's the biggest piece, is how do we manage that. Transportation does not look to be an issue. I sat with Rich and Joe here last week. Right now, based on our current ridership, remembering we're doing a lot of remote driving, that we have 2 buses that would be questionable if they were at 100% ridership, but we don't have a single bus at 100% ridership. That's there. Most of them were 60, 70, 80, and then you take that and force families into single seats. So transportation doesn't look like it's going to be an issue for us. That's there. So we are monitoring the situation and looking at those pieces to be able to get kids back and forth safely in order to move to that 3 feet when the time comes appropriately. Yes, as Ann noted, we do have Promethean boards. Most of the ones that we have are for just the Promethean boards. Have gone up today. I think we have 1 more we have to put up tomorrow. Promethean is a competitor to Smart. Back when we did the Smart bonding years back, it feels like at this point, we gave teachers a choice of a couple different setups, and we had several who picked the Promethean boards, and we were able to get those up today as part of getting classrooms ready for all the kids to come back on Monday to make sure everyone still had a board, an activity board in their classroom. So we have most of those up and are running. I believe we have it in for the reimbursement on those funds to come back, which will help fund the next round of purchases. So we did the Google purchases. We got these boards. Smart board replacements are next until we go through that bout of expenditures. When we're done, we're still going to have the majority of funds available for district use. The technology committee is getting back together to work on the instructional technology plan. And remember, that is the document that starts as the foundation for any future smart bond planning that's into place. So it's nice to see those boards up. They look great in the classroom. And we look forward to seeing those go into use. For hiring, we, the principals have covered where they are in the hiring. At this point, we still do anticipate bringing to the board the first round of hires for the upcoming school year at the May meeting. So we will let you know if that changes, but right now, we still anticipate that being able to happen. There's a couple of positions that will probably come in June as the result of, the federal monies we talked about before. Part of that being the CSC chair conversation and some of those support positions and the special ed position. So,
Different
yeah,
than the.
yeah, different than the retirement review. Yes. So, we're just waiting on that information, which, as soon as we get the information, we can share. And then we'll have a better direction of where that to go. But we plan on round 2 coming in June, and then we'll wrap up, if needed, anything in July for the hiring process, but that moves forward as planned. And the last note, we are feverishly putting together the newsletter that's there, remembering that the public hearing is on the 6th. We are going to be cutting some things very close about newsletters getting home before the public hearing. So we'll have to do some additional,
Thursday.
yeah, so we'll have to do some additional, kind of pushing that here's the newsletter and it's out, so folks know. One of the advantages of last year with having to do the ballots the way we did is that we got to some of our outlying areas, Jackie's house, my house, that are different postal codes, but we haven't ever been able to reach. We now have addresses and lists of those folks, so we're going to mail those directly to those people. And of course, then the bulk mailings go out to the Shushan and the Salem, but that's going to be a little bit of a tight squeeze, but we are working on that now with the plans of having that out at the end of the week. But we are going to be tight on the newsletter, so just so we know that in advance. And that is it for me, unless there's any questions.
Any questions? All right. So, moving on to committee reports. Communications Committee?
So we have, the packet was our report from our early March meeting. And the first thing, I don't know if you've got a chance to look at it, but we wanted to present to the board a couple options for a tagline. So what we came up with, the 3 are here, and I'll read them for you. First one is, from here you can go anywhere. Then the next 2 are kind of similar, was rich in history committed to excellence, or grounded in tradition committed to excellence. And so those were some ideas that the committee came up with. We want to pass along to the board. We'll let you mull over those for the next month. But I'm interested in any feedback you might have. So one other thing that we hadn't discussed at the meeting, I don't think, but I had thought about was potentially also incorporating one of these ideas into the so the logo that we use. It says
Liberty and freedom.
Liberty and freedom. That maybe something about tradition and excellence would be more appropriate in that than liberty and freedom. And then have that actually be separate from our tagline. We actually had thrown around the you can go anywhere from here, and from here you can go anywhere. So think about those and either now or later provide some feedback for us. Also, at that March meeting, we had talked about Vermont students and out of district, but a big part of that is Vermont students. And so at our April meeting, we spoke more about that. I'll report on that in a moment. And then also the board brochure. So that's something we've been spending time on. And honestly, I don't know exactly where we are on that as far as us talking to the board, talking to Dave, talking to Amy. Do you know if that is anything Amy's working on, Dave?
Not sure. I can check. Right now, it's likely on the back burner because of the bunch of newsletters that have to get out.
Yeah, I know that it's something that we've had conversations with her about since probably December or January, I think. So, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
and I
something
think at the last, we talked about it at the last meeting.
at the last meeting here too, yeah, at our last board meeting, so, yeah, it easily could be pushed to the back burner right now, but it has been something that we've brought up a few times. And I guess a little bit of lack of clarity of the process to go through. So if she's working with us on something, is that, do we come to the board to ask the board to ask the superintendent to ask her? Or is that, you know, what needs to happen in order for, just because it's been, I guess it'd be fair to say it's been a little frustrating, just because it's been months since this first came up, and how to make that happen. Or if it's not going to happen, then say it's not going to happen, that'd be fine too, and then we can just move on, and Dan or I would probably put it together. But, so I guess I don't really know those lines, what is that organization chart that we want to like? I mean, maybe form, you know, in a very formal way, it would be committee suggestion to the board giving that directly to the superintendent going to Amy.
And that might make sense if it were an outside committee, but it is a committee of the board. So, and it has board representation. So,
What are your thoughts on that, Dave? Just to not have to.
Yeah, no, generally, you know, subcommittees make recommendations back to the board. I mean, that's their only authority piece that's there, right? So, and then if there's a, you know what, we want to make a suggestion to the board that we want to have a brochure for the what ifs and you know, here's all the stuff we want to have into it. Now, that idea comes back to the board and say, hey, to help facilitate communication, we want to be able to have this brochure go into place. The full board says, yep, let's go ahead and move forward, something like that, and then that gets moved to administration and we make sure it gets put together.
So maybe we need a motion. I mean, I feel like we kind of had that. I felt like there was general consensus at the last meeting to do that, but I don't think we actually had a motion. I don't really think we need a motion, but is there general consensus that we ask the superintendent to ask Amy to put together the brochure that she's said she will? She just wants to make sure that the superintendent wants to put together.
I would like to see that happen.
Yeah.
Sweet. Perfect. And then, so at our April meeting, we spent most of our time talking about, you know, how would we reach out to those students. It wasn't 100% clear. It was kind of a brainstorming session. Again, I think they, you know, it probably, there'd be a key administrative role in that. But not Vermont, out of district and you know, kind of thinking about Vermont students because there's a bunch of them up the road, or some number of them up the road.
Because they have to make a choice.
Because they have, right, exactly, they have school choice, and so the you know, one of the questions was it actually led to a good discussion about, you know, we have some students from our district who choose to go to those schools at their own expense. And I guess I've had a little frustration at the lack of curiosity of why that might be. I think that one thing, it's a topic for a future board meeting, would be to discuss, do we want to, should there be an exit interview policy for folks who decide to, should we offer the opportunity or request an exit interview with someone who decides to send their son or daughter elsewhere? Just understand, just as a learning opportunity. I think it would, I think we'd want to think about who does that. It would want to be very, which to me seems like a great opportunity. Like instead of being like, huh, I wonder why they do. Maybe we can just ask them. And I think people probably it was a bunch of answers. And so, you know, and I think we would want to be somebody who's not going, we wouldn't want to be somebody who they're going to feel like they don't want to offend. You just want to know. So, so that was, so that was actually in district kids. But then, you know, we're talking about schools that spend a lot of time and effort on, and expense on their marketing branding. And I think that's the new reality, right? And I think it's relevant even now. You know, there's people who moved into the general area in past year during this pandemic, and you want them to have access to a favorable view of your school. And so I think that it's, and also I think for people who are in our district, we want to, you know, we certainly want to be putting our best foot forward. So all that kind of comes back to the communication piece, but there's still a little lack of clarity of, right at the end of the day, some of that's not necessarily board stuff. But we had a good, robust discussion about that.
Question, and not the deal, so I'm just gonna ask, I think the exit interview is a fantastic idea, but if we wanna start branding and marketing ourselves, have we thought, or is it possible to talk to the students who are coming from Vermont here, and see kind of what they like, why they're coming here, so that maybe we can put together, kind of look at our branding and see what, draws people here, so that maybe we can draw more people from Vermont, and, or a way to kind of look at that picture?
So I think that potentially, so there's a long history that historically this has just been where all the kids came. So I think it was kind of the default, and it's become the default.
Yep.
And so, I think that the more of the question would be if people decide not to come here, what is they're looking for?
Well, yeah, why are they choosing Burnsburg and why are they choosing Long Trail?
Right.
Yeah.
Why are they choosing, and then we can then.
Because I think,
can brand them down.
those are schools that, there's some things that we do extremely well. We just don't tell anybody about it. And so I think that is an opportunity.
So you guys have been busy?
What's
You've
that?
been busy?
We have been, yeah. No, it was a good discussion.
The report from March has been attached, but we did talk about it the last time. We did not meet this month. And at this particular point in time, I was talking to Jackie, I think at this point, we're not going to continue to meet regularly. And we're going to move to an as-needed because the review of the policy handbook has been completed. We seem to be in a good place, and Dr. Glover we have the schedules for review of policies that you've created for us, so that'll be our guiding document. And if at any point, we do need to have a meeting, if Mondays still work, we can schedule them as needed. The Equity Committee did meet this month, and
Before we move on to the Equity Committee,
oh,
just want to thank you so much for your hard work on the policy committee. That was work that
Thank you.
moved us so far forward, it would not have happened in board setting, and that was something that had been talked about for a long time, since as long as I've been on the board, so thank you guys so much for, and Mary as well, Mary was, which was still on the board. But thank you for being the chair of that committee and making that happen.
oh, you're welcome. And, I learned a lot. So that's always a good thing. And the Equity Committee did meet this month and had talked about some information about definitions, and then we're moving into, we had stopped to look at different policies that are out there, looking at the format, looking at the language, talking about how we wanted to set ours up. And we broke it down into areas and with their topics. And there's a Google document for the Equity Committee members to look at. And there's a list being populated of topics. It's topics for the policy, but it's actually, we decided not to limit it to just what we thought could go into the policy. If somebody wanted, it could be something that they think needs to go into an action plan, just to get the topics out there so that we're being mindful that we're trying to touch as many of those things. And whether they're included in the policy or not, I think they're still a very positive part of the conversation. So that will go on next Monday. And I think that's our three, right? Oh, and there was a district shared decision making. Is there somebody to report for that?
Yep, we met, it was our second meeting in, there where we were continuing to look at the goals of, what we do for graduation and our graduation rates, and what we can do to help support kids when we're looking at getting back and being able to return. I have the minutes, I will get them to the board so we can attach them similarly as we do here for there. Good conversation last time. We're a little light on parent members because we had a couple parent members step up, so we're looking to recruit some more parents in. So any parents who are on, if you're interested, please let me know. Be more than happy to have some more voices there. Right now, the BLPTs are doing some work as well on the code of conduct side of things, because that's another piece this committee is looking at. Make sure we have the ample stakeholder input and voices into that document as we work to bring it together for its approval at the end of the year. So a lot of work, at the end of year work starting up with this committee, and we'll be probably meeting a couple times a month here through for next month and maybe even into June to get some things wrapped up.
So how many people are on the committee? Who's on the committee?
I will get you the list. Officially on the set, we had, this is just me counting in my head, we were close to 10 for the district, at the district level of the committee.
Any questions on the,
So the code of conduct will be, any tweaks, changes to that will be ready for our July meeting?
Well, right now on the timing of it, I was just working on it today, is that we hope to get you a draft version of that sooner. So you have an opportunity to look at it first. One of the homework pieces we're doing right now is, I don't know if you're familiar with the Randolph Academy, has kind of been the model of the restorative justice. And it gets held up, you may remember it, and you may remember it from a NISBA conference. So we've been looking at their materials and their code of conduct, and what does theirs look like compared to ours, and what is in theirs that we think we should add, and what do we have that we like in ours, and kind of do that compare and contrast piece, and putting those pieces together. So the idea being is that we can make sure that restorative justice piece is in. We don't have any of the equity pieces into that part yet. I'm sure it'll become a conversation, but that may be part of the growing process of this document. Once we have the policy set, the equity committee, I can see that kind of a natural flow into the process. But the idea is to have it in advance so we can have the public hearing on it. So when July 1st through 15th, whenever we decide to have the organizational meeting, that at that meeting we're go ahead and we're ready to approve that. So the principals can get it into their handbooks, and then they can get that out for the beginning of the year.
and our late edition, Camp O, I think I've just done it. Entertain a motion to approve the FFA summer camp experience at Camp O.
Second.
All those in favor, any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you.
They skipped you, and they went right on to the.
There you go. Yeah, I didn't think there would be an issue, but I should have offered a conversation.
Thank you to Mrs. Maxwell for taking them. Sounds like a great
It
experience.
does sound like a great experience, so.
She's taken.
She's done it
some
before.
students
Yeah,
in.
yeah. I've heard kids talk about it. They say it's really great.
All right, moving on to personnel. Entertain a motion to accept the resignation of Abby Ferrara as district clerk effective April 16th, 2021.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Motion passed 5-0. Entertain a motion upon recommendation of the superintendent, Colleen Mavica, who holds a professional certification in students with disabilities, grades 1 through 6, is hereby granted tenure in the special education tenure area effective on September 1st, 2021.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Okay. Congratulations, Ms. Manica.
She's waving her hand too.
So, good milestone. And the next item is a discussion item, and that is the athletic director position.
So I had asked to put this on the agenda for a couple reasons. One is I just thought that we had an opportunity for some clarification on a couple points. One was the whether this is a union-controlled position.
It is currently owned by the unit. Attached to the agenda is actually the page that clarifies how the stipend goes from the unit.
So because it's clarified there, is that what means?
Well,
That
it's been,
implies that it's
yeah, it's been negotiated into the WADA contract. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily stuck there. That if we wanted to pull it out or had other requirements that there, it require some conversations with WADA.
Yep, no,
Do
absolutely.
there, but
And I
it's,
don't, if there's somebody in the unit who wants to do an awesome job, then sweet. Right, I mean, there's lots of advantages, I think, to having somebody in the school.
Mhm. Oh, absolutely.
Most of it, right? But then also having the time and availability, interest, and passion. The second piece is job description of just what, it's never been 100% clear to me. I through Grapevine, at Stewart's around town, I think there's drastically different expectations, or at least different levels of engagement in between different schools. And so it just wasn't clear to me, like, what, is somebody just gonna do what they feel like doing, or is there a job description, or there, I think for somebody, and maybe it's all known internally, but I was just curious.
So I recently had a Zoom call with other alumni from Skidmore, and one of the alumni is the athletic director at Galway, which holds very different size, and not comparing, but it's just interesting to see how she does like observations and evaluations of her coaches, where she goes and she watches them, and is more of like a mentor, and helping the like coaches establish their technique, so to speak.
Is she an administrator?
Yeah, it's at that level, yeah. So very different, and I'm
Yep.
not saying, but just something when we're discussing their roles and expectations to think about. It was very eye-opening.
Right, well, it seems like there's a certain amount of coordination that has to happen, and that can be somebody who's in the same unit or not.
Yeah.
Then the evaluation piece obviously could not be somebody who is in the unit, but that makes sense, it happens.
I know at some schools it's a full-time, that's your full-time position, probably that's what hers is, it's a full-time.
Yeah, because she is also a coach and has other roles besides just athletic director. But
How big is school scale?
are they B?
That would be my
I'm
guess.
not sure. And then just, I know in the past too, like we had in Granville, we've had both an athletic director that has been in district and out of district, and both very positive experiences.
Galway's just under 800.
There are high schools under it.
No, it's K-12.
So that's
It's about the same size.
they're probably C.
Yeah, probably six.
I feel like we played them in year to see.
'Cause I think-
We were like kind of.
Greenwich is like 800 and change.
And I like the time in sport too.
Or around Scatterville size is what I would imagine.
These were
540.
540, 558, so.
Yeah.
So Dr. Glover, is there any observation of coaching?
There are some observations of coaches that do occur, not on the formal side, not like what Jackie's talking about. I do know that, Mr. Zerzicki has been observing lessons, but he is also a WADA member. So there is, WADA doesn't supervise WADA, and there's that pieces of it, but I do know that Ms. Adams and, and myself, and before Ms. Adams, the principals before have been to athletic contests, so we pay attention and see what's going on, and if there's issues or concerns, and we bring them up, or even, they're great jobs, or like what you're doing, and that are brought up as well. But nothing that has been set formally on, here's an evaluative kind of component to the coaching position.
So nothing structured.
Nope, nothing structured, and there isn't anything structured in the teacher's contract either for that.
And I guess that's a whole different, I hadn't even thought about that. I mean, I was mostly thinking of support, of scheduling, right? Who's responsible for scheduling? Just clarity. I mean, I feel like there's been lack of clarity at times. And so we're really responsibilities and authorities. In that job description, what are they responsible for and what authority do they have when it comes to scheduling, right? You could have conflicts of scheduling I guess it's just, I feel like there's been a lack of clarity.
So who creates the job description? Especially if we're moving into hiring a new person to do the job, we really need to be able to explain what that job is, so this is the perfect time to break that down and identify what those responsibilities are and expectations. And who would do that?
If it's part of our their unit, they get a certain, like a period or 2 period, right, during the day, or no, is that in there?
There isn't.
No? So
No,
everything is
it's-
addition to?
No, that doesn't mean there's a time where they aren't working during the day. I mean,
No, yeah, I just,
when
some
the weather
schools
comes
build
up
it in,
and-
if you're the athletic director, you
Yeah.
get
Um,
a period or whatever.
yeah, so, and to that, part of that, it gets drawn up, administratively drawn up, the board would approve it. That's there, again, because it belongs to WADA, be some conversation with WADA.
And I think that, I mean, maybe I'm naive or maybe I'm just a broken record, but it seems like a collaborative process. I mean, we have some very experienced coaches who could probably, and really experienced coaches and inexperienced coaches, because they might have different needs. I think it makes sense to pull them into that discussion in a meaningful way, not just in a superficial way, but actually in a meaningful way, and see what are their needs, what needs have not been getting met, what are reasonable expectations of theirs. Maybe they have expectations that somebody would determine are not reasonable. As board members, I don't think we're any experts in this. I just think that it's part of a process that we need to make sure happens. Because otherwise, I think we'll just kind of continue down the same road. I think of things that person could do. So I got coaching certification 2 years ago, and I was surprised there's a bunch of good stuff, right? I mean, it's a fair bit of work. But I think as we have more and more non-teacher coaches, I think there's a role to be played, and I think in Granville that happens just about expectations. Who's laying out those expectations for coaches about about building their program, and are they just drawing on the recollection of when they were athletes, or is there any meaningful dialogue, or at the very least a little list of expectations that's presented to them?
So, just so that we're clear with Dr. Glover what we would like, just so we can come to a consensus, are we asking for a collaboratively built job description?
That's perfect, and that's yes. Thank you because that I assume it's going to be. I assume they speak about collaboration, but no, I think we did say that we want it to be collaborative.
We want it to be collaborative. So, Dr. Glover, is the consensus? Everybody's in agreement to have a collaboratively built job description for the athletic director position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if that can be in place sooner rather than later, because we need to fill that position when Mr. Zarzaki retires. So,
And I think responsibilities and authorities.
responsibilities and authorities.
So that's has to do with what I don't know exactly what they do throughout the year, but I think that even the budget right? What role do they play in budgeting and doling out money for uniforms? Who makes those decisions? Maybe that's not their deal at all, I don't know. But I think it's important to know.
Yeah. And who keeps all of the inventories and all of the, keeping track of all of the sports equipment? I mean, there's a lot across the school
Right.
year, so. There's more than just schedules and games. I mean, there's a lot that goes on. Any further discussion on the athletic position? Entertain a motion, moving on, substitute approval. Entertain a motion to approve the appointment of Noah Bates as a substitute teacher and a substitute teacher aide.
Second.
Did they meet all of the fingerprinting requirements and?
To my knowledge, yes. I can recheck with.
When I make a motion, I'm assuming all this is
Yeah.
good to go, right? Because
Yeah.
that's why it's brought to the
That is
board.
my assumption.
Okay.
But I just,
Okay,
sometimes,
yeah.
No, well, that's,
sometimes
Yeah, I
it's
don't
actually
wanna-
listed in the motion, and sometimes
Yeah,
it's not.
and they-
It
and it's not-
indicates not, so I
which-
just,
which is it's normally listed here, which is I'll recheck with Gina to make sure. If not, they'll have to go through their process before they have to, because it's law anyway.
no, just, as, because they do sometimes put that on there. Okay.
Dr. Glover, can I add something? Mr. Bates he's currently been our student teacher in the building, so he has to meet a lot of those requirements through his program at St. Rose, so just so you know that.
Well, thank you very
Thank
much.
Good to know. Little background.
Always helps. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your hands. Thank you, motion passed, 5-0. And the next one is also, right now, just a discussion item, is that I had raised the possibility of going back and taking a look at awarding the salary increases that we had talked about but did not act upon when we thought we were going to lose bucketfuls of state aid. So if people have had a chance to look at those numbers and thought about percentage, that would be in the range of, in the range of 2.5% to 3.5%. I do like the 3%
I like
number.
the 3.
I like the 3, but, so if we could prepare motions for the at-will, or the terms and conditions, people who have been here for a full year, so that there are 6 of them: Joe Wilbur, Tina Beatty, Julie Adams, Wendy Carey, Karen Vieira, and Tina Eastman, for this school year. So it would be the 2021 school year, and then
It would be retroactive. for this
retroactive,
year.
and then we'll use that number for
Looking forward.
discussions moving forward. So if you could have that ready for us
Next
at our
meeting?
next meeting, then we can get that in this budget year.
Okay. And that was 3%, right?
It's 3%. Okay, moving on to new business. Entertain a motion to approve the request from Salem Little League to use the facilities on evenings and weekends from April 1st to August 31st, 2021.
So,
Okay.
We'll figure it out.
Okay. Any discussion?
This has nothing to do with whether we approve it or not. I'm just looking at it and it says, please do not advertise your event until you receive approval to sue the school facility. I think we want use.
Yes, we,
Yes, please.
it's a new approach.
Right, it just caught
Right.
my eye when I was looking at it just now.
We got any further discussion or concern? No. All those in favor of approving the request, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carried 5-0. Moving on to policy, finishing up the last of the policy work that we did. Entertain a motion to approve the staff exit interview questionnaire. And I just read that and I'm gonna take that back for just a minute. Do we really want to approve it? Because if we do, then we can't change it without going through the board. For me, when we did it, it was a fluid document. We actually have not even used it through one cycle of retirement. And if we bring it to the board, we can't make changes until it comes back to the board. Do we really want to do that, or just, we want to leave it as it is? We have no feedback on the form.
Yeah.
So,
Maybe we should wait till we have feedback. Maybe used it a little bit.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I think that makes
Okay.
sense.
So we will table that action.
So table versus postpone?
I don't think was there a motion?
I
don't
asked
think
it, but
so.
nobody did it. So we
We're just
can-
gonna say it dies on the table.
Okay, thank you. Entertain a motion to accept the second read of policy 3421, Title IX, and sex discrimination.
Second.
Any discussion?
If the board chose, it could waive the second reading and go to adoption of the policy.
So we have that motion. Point of order, do we have to have a second motion?
I think I would, I move that we amend the motion to include adoption. Wait, second,
Second.
and second my motion.
All those in favor of amending the motion to include adopting policy 3421, Title IX, and sex discrimination, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carries 5-0. And entertain a motion to adopt policy 3150, school volunteers.
Well, I think we need to actually both
Oh, you have
to accept and
Yep.
adopt. Accept, second read and adopt. On B, because we just approved the amendment, we didn't actually approve
Oh,
the
so
original motion.
that does, the amendment does not supersede the first.
No, it just changes the first one, and then we still have to.
So the, okay, so 5-0, you move to amend
So we,
to include adopt. So now, all those in favor of
From the adopting.
accepting the second read
accept,
and
okay,
adopting.
okay, thank you.
I got
You
it.
got
Good
it.
thing for Bob.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So this one. I'll get all this. Sure. Okay, thank
We
you.
didn't take the quickest road.
I
Got
didn't
there.
take the, I didn't take the cliff notes on that one. Okay, moving on to the school volunteers policy, entertain a motion to adopt policy 3150, school volunteers.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carries.
And just as the policy.
I was gonna say, it says policy.
Yeah.
All right. Topics for future board meetings. So actually, I think we've actually identified a few of them. The fencing and
That's correct.
finishing up of the bus garage, finalizing the building project tasks,
Athletic
and
director description.
athletic director.
Exit interview with parents and plus or minus students who decide to although they live in the district, to go elsewhere, if they're willing to, when they leave.
Students. And then Rich mentioned the plans for summer, the federal funds. We should see all of the additional budgets, including the cafeteria. We don't see those, so these are the things that we should be seeing. So any of the additional budget funds. And one of the things, I mean, as we move towards this repeat, we should be, I know we mentioned, Mrs. Beer mentioned it, we've mentioned it, we really do need to, and there's a requirement to go out to our community and talk to them about it and actively solicit their comfort level with this particular change, if we were to make it. So we need plans for how we can do that. That doesn't mean that we're committing to doing it, but in order to even think about doing it, we have to have those public outreaches. So we have to have meetings planned, and we have to have the opportunity. You know, I know it would be virtual, but as you did it at the beginning when you explained the reopening plan, we need to get that information out and what it means and answer questions, because there's a lot of conflicting information out there. And I think if we make our case as to what we're looking at and how it would affect us here, I think we'd be further ahead. I know that Dr. Glover had talked to you about the information that you put about the masks, and when people saw the change in the masks, they thought that that automatically meant that we were going to 3 feet. So just the way the paragraphs fell in the letter made people think that. So I think we just need to make sure that we're clear about how it would affect us here. And if people have that level of comfort to move forward, they could deal with that. So, and also, you know, just to talk about the state of vaccinations as far as, you know, just taking a look at how that plays out with students, staff, an update as to, you know, how we're doing into school. I know the Pfizer can be offered to high school students. Are there ways that high school students can find to take advantage of that, just to understand where we are in that process as well?
No, I think that's a good discussion. I mean, it could be, you know, I think there's sometimes lacking comfort with that discussion, but I think it's a good discussion to have. Obviously, you know, we're not talking about individual people, we're talking about district level, but it does impact the district, and it could potentially impact the district next year, right? And so, and I think lots of workplaces are going through that discussion is what I think, because it's, you know, I don't think we can mandate it currently legally, because it's the stage that it's at with the FDA. Eventually, we might be able to. I'm not saying we'd want to or wouldn't want to. I have no idea, but I think that we're moving towards a world where people who are vaccinated are going to be able to do some things people aren't vaccinated are going to be able to do. And I think that it's something that, you know, I think if you look at that week before break, I think that was potentially, you know, students were in school because of adults not being vaccinated. And so, and that's not an opinion of people's decisions, that's just a statement of fact. And so, you know, I think that at the very least, you know, we might not decide. I think we at least have to have that discussion.
And it's not up for board meetings, but I did receive a letter from New York State School Board Association. And this one is offering a complimentary confidential board self-evaluation. So they would coordinate the board evaluation and provide feedback. And then if we felt that there were areas that we would want to target, they do provide you know, different workshops on that. So if people are interested, I would just have to make the contact, and they would give us a link to the evaluation, the self-evaluation, and they would take care of doing the compilation and giving us the feedback on it. If people are okay with that?
Well, that'd be great. I mean, I actually think it would be great if we could expand that to some 360-degree feedback from any interested party. I think that we would only benefit.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. I will follow through with that. So at this point, is there any other topics for conversation? We've listed a lot of them.
Yeah, that was impressive.
I think we're good.
Good list.
Okay, good. So at this point, I would like to open up the meeting to the public. If there is anybody who has anything that they would like to say or share with the board.
Somebody talk to us.
Unmute first.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, it's Jane Daly. So I'm coming from you from Glens Falls. But as I'm listening to the construction going on and the beeping and all that, I just want to, like, as excited as we are to have more kids come back, I want to make sure we're doing it safely. So I think as we're bringing kids back more and the construction sites are still there, I do apologize. I was like a half hour late for the meeting, so maybe this covered it. But I just want to make sure that we're bringing everybody back to the safest environment as possible. The primary building and making sure that's a safe place to make sure that any movement is going on. And I'm hoping that that's going to happen between now and Monday. I just wanted to put that out there, that we're not rushing. I just want to make sure that everything is good before we start to move back. So I want to make sure so that everything is. See, there we go, construction again, or something is going on. I don't know what it is, but it's pretty loud from here. So just wanted to put that out there, and that's it.
Thank you, Jane. We've had the competing noise for the bulk of the meeting, so that one I'm not sure
I
what that
assumed like it
was.
was like a mini bike.
Yeah, something.
It's a 4-wheeler, they're grading or something, dust is going everywhere.
No, thank you for those comments.
Anybody else like to add anything for the board?
I feel like Ian's gonna have to start calling him.
No? All right. Okay, well, if that's the case, so, I'd like to entertain a motion to move into executive session for the discussion of medical, financial, credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation or matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation. That's a mouthful of a sentence.
So,
And at this point, I don't anticipate any action when we get back. It is 7:30. Oh, all those in favor? Did you vote on it?
Oh, yeah.
hi.
Thank you.
Sorry, I was distracting, running around, picking up my extension.
Well,
Good night,
I'm
everyone.
going to tell you,
All right, what to do?
I think the pandemic has created a situation where I don't have to multitask a lot,
Yeah.
so I don't.
I don't mind wearing a mask, but I don't see as well, and I don't think I hear as well.
I know
when
I
wear a
don't
mask,
hear
and
it.
it's-
I definitely don't hear as well.
I feel like I'm always like this, like when I can't hear, I'm always like it makes a difference.
Like, it makes a difference, exactly, like, it's something about.
Turn down the radio so you can see.
I'm always telling my students, I'm sorry, I can't hear your mask on. Like, you gotta talk louder.
Any choice of room you'd like to go in?
Whatever's available.
Sounds like Commodore. It's springtime.
Seconded? Motion to
Danger. There's an owner in Belmont.
Yeah. P-sub, big love,
Yeah, that one of the Eagle.
14-7 are on
Yeah,
that.
Oh, that was incredible.
I've done that one.
God, those were
Oh, if you have in the
Watched
chat.
This meeting 5 times.
Yeah, I'll send it to you if you want it.
Okay.
incredible.
I
Nice to see
just copied and pasted it.